I'd just like to start this media stand-up with a couple of introductions. On my right is Inspector Ash Tabb, Canterbury Police District Prevention Manager. On my left is John Filsell, Christchurch City Council, Head of Community Support and Partnerships. My name is Dave Stackhouse. I'm the District Commander for the Canterbury District for Fire and Emergency New Zealand. I'd also like to acknowledge the passing of Graham Still, our wildfire specialist who passed last week, who was a co-author of the fire investigation report. I'll begin the stand-up with a quick summary of the facts and then open to questions. Just after 2 p.m. on the 14th of February 2024, Fire and Emergency New Zealand was alerted to a vegetation fire near Worsley's Road on the Christchurch Port Hills. The fire burnt for 3 weeks through approximately 650 hectares and destroyed a residential structure and various infrastructure, including damage to the Christchurch Adventure Park. A fire investigation report into the Port Hills fire, which started on the 14th of February 2024, has located a specific area of origin on private land, but the cause of the fire remains undetermined. Investigators were unable to identify a specific ignition source at the area of origin. As the cause of the fire cannot be proven to an acceptable level of certainty, it is classified as undetermined. If further information becomes available, the investigation will be reopened. An examination of the scene quickly identified a specific area of origin of approximately 5 square metres and about 50 metres off the Worsley Road. The owner of the property where the fire originated cooperated with the investigation and advised there had been no activity or equipment used on the day when the fire started. Our legal advice is that due to privacy reasons, Fire and Emergency is unable to release the specific area of origin because it is on private property. We acknowledge this may be disappointing to all who were affected by the Port Hills fire, and we're hoping for answers. Our investigation into the cause of the fire included 3 wildfire investigators working alongside New Zealand Police, who arrived in Christchurch the day after the fire started. They interviewed the 3 witnesses who were in the vicinity of the fire when it started and were the first to report the fire via 111. They assessed photos and videos of the early stages of the fire, which were sent in by public and captured on CCTV. In the lead up to the fire, Canterbury was experiencing warm, dry summer conditions combined with dry vegetation across the entire district. These conditions assisted in the ignition and spread of the fire. Significant incidents like this acts as a strong reminder to everyone that we should take steps to protect ourselves from the risk of wildfire. We encourage the community to develop an emergency plan, which includes evacuation procedures and management of livestock and animal and pets. We recommend that property owners take action to create a defensible space around their properties in such areas and remove combustibles and unwanted vegetation plant low flammability plants to assist in making green fire breaks around their properties. People can find out more about protecting themselves from wildfire from Fire and Emergency's website, checkit'salright.light.co.nz. We'd like to thank the many volunteer and career firefighters, contractors and staff who worked long hours to contain and extinguish this fire. We would also like to thank our partner agencies for their support throughout the response to the Port Hills fire, and especially the residents and the Christchurch community for their cooperation, and those who sent photos and videos of the fire during the incident. Thank you. Take any questions?
Just to clarify, so you know an area of 5 square metres on the property where it started, but you can't identify where that was, but you do know of the small area where it did ignite?
That's correct. We have identified the area of origin, and it's in a 5 by 5 square metre point. It is on private property.
Is it harder to prevent fires going forward if you're not sure what ignited them in the first place?
Obviously, if we establish a cause sufficiently, it can go towards prevention of fire because we can put strategies in place around that. Obviously, New Zealand Police can also help if we have patterns of suspicious fire, and if we establish the that we have particular causes, we can look at mitigation to eliminate them. So yes, it is useful to us. That's why we do it, and it also helps with our operational reviews.
Is it quite frustrating? You obviously have put a lot of time and energy into finding the cause that you can't pinpoint exactly what it was.
Well, we've pinpointed the location. There's 4 main classes of determination which sit around accidental, undetermined, which this fire is, suspicious behaviour or lit by persons unknown, and natural circumstances. So fire investigators spend a lot of time narrowing that down to the area of origin to a particular point, looking at indicators to establish that location is correct, and then they match it with physical evidence such as video footage, eyewitness accounts and so forth, and then we establish what the ignition source was, and the ignition source is where we haven't been able to definitively name what that is.
Because I think I read that the landowner didn't have anything happening in his property on that day, so you can't rule out that this was lit purposefully by someone?
Well, at this stage, as I said, we know where the fire started. We just can't identify definitively with enough evidence what the ignition factor was.
So you can't rule out that it was not accidental?
Well, we've ruled out the hypothesis of what those other ignition factors might have been, but we can't nail it down so it's undetermined under our classification criteria.
What type of evidence or information needs to be provided to you to reopen this investigation?
Obviously, and Ash, you might like to speak to this as well, but obviously eyewitness accounts, they are very useful to collaborate with the evidence on the ground and the physical indicators of the fire spread and where it tracked back to the point of origin. Any video footage that we haven't seen or pictures. Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, just anything additional. We're always seeking more information. The matter would be reopened if we could if we obtained more forensic evidence, any other evidence or witness statements. We do have a number of CCTV footage. We've done a lot of work with the witnesses which we have come forward, so we probably need additional information from other witnesses, or as Dave said, around some further photographic evidence.
You're asking locals in the area to plant low flammable plants in their backyard. Has there been any conversation around the replanting of the pine plantations? Like what's happening with that? Because obviously they're highly flammable and they seem to be replanted.
Yeah, I'll probably refer to John here, but Fire and Emergency New Zealand has done extensive work with community groups and providing information on low flammability species, i.e. natives as an example, and guidance on defendable spaces and how to make that safe for around their residential properties. But John, you may like to talk to it.
Yeah, the council before the end of the year will initiate a Port Hills plan process, which we think will provide an ideal forum to have those wider discussions on what's planted on the Port Hills and why, along with any environmental impacts. Considerations do have to be balanced against what private property owners can do quite legitimately and legally on their own land. So the best results are usually a discussion and agreement, and that's what we aim to have.
And I understand that forestry obviously rely on some of those areas for the pine plantations, but at what point do you sit back and go, we can't keep doing this because it's really highly flammable? Is there conversations around that?
At this point in time, the conversations, as I said, are more a matter of what can we do together. What are the operative factors? They're not around, look, you can't do this on your land anymore. That's not the type of conversation that the council envisages will happen to any great extent in the near future.
Are the agencies wary about what's to come, considering the lack of rainfall that we've seen in the region for the past 2 months? That there could be another repeat?
Well, from a foreign emergency perspective and my key partners, we are doing a lot of pre-planning for this coming fire season. You can see we've already had early fires in what we call traditional non-fire season periods, such as the Waipara fire. So that is all factored into our pre-planning, and as you saw in the Port Hills, a key part of that pre-planning is working together, so we have a coordinated response and we provide the correct assets, so, you know, for the type of risk that's out there.
You're leaving the door slightly ajar for some of those eyewitness accounts. I mean, have you been satisfied with the response from the public up until this point?
The community being very forthcoming with information and that, and so there may be further out there, and would encourage people to contact police or fire and emergency if there is further information. But we've had a significant amount of information for a number of members of the public who are in the vicinity or there or thereabouts. Remembering that the Port Hills, like in many areas, is a real high recreation area. There's a lot of people on there any time. So we've gathered as much as we can at this time, but there could be other persons out there.
And Dave, you touched on this, but obviously the residents up there are pretty anxious these days, and so what would your message to them be if we have another hot, dry summer ahead, given particularly that the cause of this one isn't determined?
Sure, yeah. Again, it's all about pre-planning, you know, having a plan, and we don't, and I can't overestimate or understate that enough, to be honest. Think about your livestock, your pets, what are you going to do with them? You know, access is always top of my mind. Once a fire kicks off, I try to get and manage access back into properties as early as I can, but of course we've got to balance that against the risk. So defendable spaces, low flammability planting, they're all excellent initiatives. And removing combustibles, keeping your lawn low is a really good example of that. On one of the spurs you saw, one of those houses was completely bypassed by the fire. So it was a combination of firefighting effort, but also the grass was low.
Dave, in terms of where we are in Canterbury with the fire risk heading into summer, is this the worst you've seen it, given that some areas haven't even come out of drought through winter?
Yeah, sure. We're getting regular 2-weekly weather updates. That's part of our pre-planning cycle, so we're linked into NEWA there pretty heavily. Which is providing good intelligence. For foreign emergency, it's all about pre-planning and intelligence, but like the public and the message about pre-planning their evacuation capability and their resilience there. So yeah, it's going to probably be another hot, dry summer. It's very dry in North Canterbury, even though we've had some rain. What I'd love to see is quite a lot of heavy rain prior to Christmas, so we'll keep our fingers crossed on that one. No further questions? All right, we'll wrap it up there. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.